Democrats are standing behind their candidate for Virginia Attorney General, despite leaked messages where he fantasizes about murdering his political opponent and their children. Jay Jones sent them to a colleague back in 2022, justifying a political assassination of the state's former Republican House Speaker, Todd Gilbert. Jones writing, quote, 3 people, 2 bullets, Gilbert, Hitler, and Pol Pot. Gilbert gets 2 bullets to the head. Jones also said of his deceased Republican colleagues, quote, I will go to their funerals to piss on their graves. Jones apologized, saying, in part, reading back those words made me sick to my stomach. I'm embarrassed, ashamed, and sorry. Virginia gubernatorial candidate Abigail Spanberger hasn't called for Jones to step down, but Governor Youngkin says it's way past time.
This is demented. They have got to call for this guy to resign, step down, get out of this race in disgrace, because this is beyond disqualifying.
Spanberger, Dana, your favorite Democrat, do you think she's been tough enough on this candidate?
No, I don't. And when the Democrats nearly, well, did they lose in the midterm, or they nearly lost? And she was one of the Democrats on Capitol Hill that was banging on the wall saying, guys, we've got a problem here. You've gone way too woke. The left wing is killing us. It's a huge problem. She decided to leave Congress and run for governor, and she's been ahead in the polls this entire time. And to me, that gives you the room to run to say, you want to be governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia. It's pretty much a purple state. You could say it goes back and forth. I think you can call it a purple state. And you only get 1 4-year term, okay? She's so far ahead in the polls. Like, to me, I would just love for a woman in that position to say, this will not stand on my watch, and to call it out. And I don't think it would hurt her. Now, she might have politics or polls or internal people telling her no, but I believe in her gut, she knows what the right thing to do is. I would believe that she would say he needs to get out.
Will he get out?
I don't know how he survives, actually. It's so bad. It's so bad that when ads have already come out about this, the ads have to note every single news source where the texts have appeared, because I think when people hear the texts, they do not believe it could possibly be real. I can't believe we're even having a discussion about whether this guy is fit to be the highest law enforcement officer in the state of Virginia. The defense that we've heard so far is that it was a joke. He was just funning around. He was not. If you read in depth the follow-on conversations and follow-on texts that he had with the person that he sent him to, he was not joking around. Or the other one, which is the other argument that they're making, is that, well, he didn't act out on it. So I've had psychotic ideations about assassinating my political opponent and killing his children, but I didn't do it. So elect me Attorney General? I don't think so.
Yeah.
The thing that I think is most interesting about this is the backstory. The reason he did this, what inspired this rage, this violent psychotic rage, was a funeral for a Democrat sitting member of the state legislature that Todd Gilbert attended, the then Speaker of the House, then attended, and eulogized and spoke glowingly about that Democrat in the legislature. And that so enraged this lunatic that was what made him say, 2 bullets for him, even if he's sitting with Pol Pot and Hitler. And to me, the fact that he didn't assassinate somebody is not a plus in the first place. But in the second place, the bigger problem is, to me, is that if that's your reaction to people trying to, talk across the aisle and come up with, reasonable solutions to things, then you're unfit for any office whatsoever. Right. Just get out, go away.
And this isn't just any office. This would be the Attorney General, so he would have the power over people to put them in prison. I don't know if Virginia still has the death penalty, but that is an immense amount of power for someone that obviously lacks the temperament necessary.
Yeah, look, there should be basic qualifications if you decide to run for political office. Should you be the Attorney General of a state if you've called for the murder of your political opponent? Nope. Should you be the Attorney General if you call for the murder of children, the slaughter of children? No, I think that's pretty basic. But that's not basic for Abigail Spanberger. It's not basic for Cory Booker, who endorsed him. I haven't heard from you, Cory. Not basic for Terry McAuliffe, Ralph Northam, a myriad of Democrats in Virginia who have not come out and taken back their endorsement. It should be basic common sense for people like the Virginia Beach Democratic Committee, who reaffirms their full support of Jay Jones for Attorney General. Isn't that nice? Well done, Virginia Beach. Even Joe Scarborough, Morning Joe, came out and on the way to commercial break said maybe this guy should drop out. Like, if Joe Scarborough can get it, elected official in the Democratic Party should be able to get it too. We've seen the murder of Brian Thompson, the healthcare CEO. We've seen the Kavanaugh assassination plot, the assassination of Charlie Kirk, the murder of 2 kids in a church in Minneapolis. We need leaders to say enough is enough. We cannot have a candidate who's called for the murder of children. Pretty basic in the time that we're in, especially. Where are you, Democrats?
Well, we have a Democrat right here.
Lucky me.
Look at that.
Where are you on this? Should he resign?
Well, it wouldn't be resign. He should step down, and I think that he should. I think those texts are completely disqualifying. When I first saw them, I thought, like, oh, is Stephen Miller having a fever dream? And then I was like, no, this is real, that this happened. And I think that it reflects poorly on him as a human being, but also as an elected official and potentially, you know, the most powerful law enforcement official in Virginia. Now, we can all say that, but it doesn't change the fact that early voting has already started and his name is on the ballot, and Abigail Spanberger is up anywhere between 10 and 12 points. And there is a very good chance that Jay Jones still wins this seat, despite the texts. And, you know, he's breathed life into her Republican opponent's campaign when she's really been floundering, saying things like, you know, I don't know why people are so upset about the Doge cuts, like it's just a job, et cetera. And now she has a few slick ads that are out tying Spanberger to Jay Jones that I think will hurt her. I don't know what happens then if he ends up winning the seat. I know that there is a lot of anxiety on the part of the Democratic Party that if you have a Republican AG, especially in Virginia, when that is, you know, the epicenter of what Russ Vote wants to do, in terms of making massive cuts, that could be really dangerous to the Democratic agenda, et cetera. But I think you do have to draw a line in the sand, and you have to say, like, we police our side of the street and beg the Republican Party to do the same. And I would love it if we could have a bit of a kumbaya moment and agree that someone like that shouldn't be in there, and you shouldn't make fun of, like, Paul Pelosi for getting a hammer in his skull.
So you're in agreement now that we should do away with early voting?
No.
Yeah, who's
with
the
you on that.
Republican who called for the murder of children? I'd love to know his or her
Kayleigh,
name.
first of all, I gave like a good 2 minutes that everyone could agree with, so let's just have it. But there's obviously a bunch of Republicans, including the president, who is very quick to say we're at war and blaming the radical left, et cetera. And there are Democrats who have also
3-second kumbaya moment that didn't last very
good.
long. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.